Hi everyone, my name's Jake and welcome to the Kitchen Scrap, where I'm about to embark on a somewhat intense journey where I learned to survive on British World War II rations for an entire year.
For heaven's sake, why?
Now, I'm currently 38 years old. I'm on a low income. I live alone in a small apartment in the city of Melbourne, Australia. And like millions of others around the globe, I'm worried about how to make ends meet. For the past few years, we've seen the basic cost of living skyrocket to astronomical heights that I've not seen before in my lifetime, and it's getting scary. Last November, the Australian Financial Review published a report which found that in the previous financial year, Australia had experienced the biggest income decline in the developed world. Now, factor in we haven't had any real meaningful wage growth in this country for the past 10, 15 years, on top of this constant, incessant inflation that we seem to be experiencing globally. Everything seems to be going up, from interest rates, council rates, energy bills, rent, food. It's no wonder that an increasing number of households in Australia have little to no disposable income left after paying the exorbitant costs of simply existing. Now, Australia is a pretty big place, but our population is relatively small comparably. We're currently sitting at around 26.6 million, and like other countries around the world, we are in the midst of a housing crisis. Now, just the other day, Food Bank Australia released their annual food hunger report, which found that a staggering 3.7 million households experienced food insecurity in 2023, which is actually up 10% from the year before. Now, while all of this is going on, all the giant banking, energy, and supermarket conglomerates reported record-breaking profits in the billions last year. So, good for them. The thing is, we live in a world of plenty and we live in a world of waste, and it breaks my heart. Australia, on average, wastes approximately 7 million tonnes of food every single year. Now, even at the best of times, I think that's unforgivable and we have to do better. So this year, I have decided to look to the past to see what lessons can be learned and how to apply them in a modern society. Back to a time when absolutely nothing went to waste, and I mean nothing. Now, before we do a deep dive into what the rations actually were and how they came about, just a couple of little channel disclaimers here. So everything I'm doing this year is based on my own research on events that took place over 80 years ago. So I'm probably going to get a few things wrong here and there. If that's the case, please do let me know and point me in the right direction. I would really appreciate it. I welcome the feedback. But the other thing is while I will endeavor to make family-friendly content, please note that when it comes to swearing, there's nothing more than I like than a good old-fashioned Now, at the time when war was declared on the 3rd of September 1939, Britain was importing somewhere between 60 and 70% of its food. Now, it kind of makes sense given they're an island nation, but that's a lot. Now, the government were acutely aware there was a very real threat that the German U-boats would form a blockade and sink all the merchant ships bringing in the food. So they made plans to take control of the nation's food stocks, and this is when rationing was introduced to the public. Now, the first thing to be rationed was fuel, for obvious reason. In terms of food rationing, that came into effect in January 1940. Now, they started slow. It was initially just butter, bacon, and sugar. I think they wanted to ease people into it and get used to the idea. But for the next 2 years, pretty much everything went on the ration. Now, it wasn't just food that was rationed, it was everything. Clothing, soap, paper, razors. If you needed to buy furniture, you had to apply for a special permit, and even then it worked off some kind of voucher system. However, we're just going to be focusing on the food. So every adult and child were issued with their own ration book. They would then have to go and register with their local butcher, dairy, and grocer, and from then on you could only purchase your rationed items from those retailers. Now, I'm guessing they used to go in once a week to collect their rationed ingredients. They would have to pay for these items as well. They weren't free. You would present your ration book and the Shopkeeper would either cut out the coupon, or I think in later days they just stamped it to help save a little bit of time there. Now, depending on who you were and what job you did depended on the type of ration. Children had their own special rations, expectant mothers got a little bit extra as well, and if you had a physically demanding job, like if you were a coal miner or you were part of the Women's Land Army, you would get a little bit extra of something as well. It might be cocoa, a bit of meat, cheese, that kind of thing. For the most part though, we are going to be sticking to the regular adult ration. So these are the typical weekly rations for an adult living in 1940s Britain. All right, so starting over here, you're allowed to have 4 ounces of bacon or ham, which works out to be approximately, 3 or 4 rashers of bacon, about 100 grams-ish. This is actually bacon. In terms of my own diet, I used to be a staunch vegetarian in my 20s. These days, I'm what you would call a flexitarian. So I do eat meat, but only on rare occasions. On average, I think it's about maybe 3 or 4 times a year, but sometimes not at all. So I'll be using a lot of plant-based meats. I've never actually tried this before. I probably won't again, to be honest, unless it tastes amazing, because this small package cost me $8 at the supermarket, which is crazy. Moving on to the main meat rations. So it was a little bit different. It was based on price, not weight. So you were allowed to spend a maximum of 1 shilling tuppence. Now, I have no idea how much that is in today's money, but I do know that it worked out to be approximately 250 grams of mince, or about 2 lamb chops. Depending on the cut of meat you chose, you could actually end up with considerably more. For instance, if you chose to have offal instead, so things like, your livers and kidneys and all of that, you would get a lot more. Now, what you see here is something called TVP, textured vegetable protein. I've actually never cooked with this before. I've always made my own veggie mince out of rice, lentils, and veggies or whatnot, but this comes highly recommended from my vegan friends. Now, I've measured out 200 grams here. Once I cook it, it's going to weigh more, so what I'm going to do is use half of it for a recipe this week. Once it's cooked, I'll weigh it, and then from there, I'll know how much I need to deduct or add on for next week's ration. Moving on to the fats. So they're allowed to have 4 ounces of lard each week, 4 ounces of margarine, and 2 ounces of butter. Now, for those of you that don't know, lard is just pig fat. Dripping is beef fat. I've never purchased or cooked with lard in my life, and I'm not about to start. So what you see here is actually vegetable shortening, which I actually think is equally as vile. So I hope you don't mind, but this is one of the switches I'm going to be making this year. If I was just going to do this challenge for a week or a month, I would have just gone ahead and used the regular stuff, but I'm making a healthier choice. So once this is used up, because we don't want to waste it, I am going to be switching that out for 4 ounces of extra virgin olive oil. Now, I do believe once this was converted to a liquid ounce, I should technically be owed a little bit more, but just to keep things simple, we're just going to stick to 4 ounces of extra virgin olive oil. Moving on to one of the more devastating items here. Each week, you would receive 2 ounces of cheese. That's it. Sometimes it went up, sometimes it went down, but overall it was typically 2 ounces. That's what we're working with here. FML. Anyways, moving on, you were allowed to have 1 shell egg per week. They actually encouraged you to have chickens. So if you did have chickens, in lieu of receiving your 1 egg, you would actually get chicken feed. This sometimes went down to 1 egg every 2 weeks. You could also purchase 1 packet of dried eggs every 4 weeks, which I think equated to 12 whole eggs. I did actually try to purchase some, but it's really hard to find, and the supermarkets are charging astronomical prices. We'll just stick to the shell egg. For the sugar, it's 8 ounces every week. I mean, that's not too bad. I think we're going to be okay. We'll see how we go with that one. Speaking of sweets, they were allowed to have 12 ounces of some kind of sweet every month. This is not every week, this is every month. I've just opted to get the dark chocolate Cadbury baking button things. This is actually 8 ounces, so I'm technically owed another 4 ounces of that. When it comes to preserves, so this covers things like jam, treacle, golden syrup. I'm not sure, but I think it included honey and imitation honey as well. I'm a little bit shady on that one, so if someone could clarify, that would be great. Just in case I'm wrong, I'm just going to assume that honey was included in that as well. You were allowed to have 1 pound every 2 months. So this was actually gifted to me. My mother made this. It's delicious. It's spiced apple jam, which I've never had before. It's beautiful. I actually weighed this jar. It's about 2.5 pounds. So this is technically gonna have to last me until sometime into May this year. So that'll be interesting, but it's really good though. Moving on to the milk, they were allowed to have 3 imperial pints of milk every week, which works out to be about 1.7 liters. Now, this is one of the ones I'm really worried about. I actually drink a lot of milk. I drink bucket loads of tea in the evening, and I'm on about 3 coffees a day myself. I feel like I'm gonna be running out of milk quite quickly. Now, I was reading the other day that they could purchase a tin of powdered milk, which equated to 4 pints. You were allowed 1 tin per family every 4 weeks in 1941 and 1942. Then in 1943, it was 1 tin every 8 weeks. So I've actually purchased some. I've never tried this before. It's whole milk powder. This is a 1 kilo bag, so I suspect this is going to last me well into the year. The one thing I am concerned about though, if anyone can please enlighten me on this, on the back it says, to retain freshness and quality, use within 28 days after opening. I kind of need it to last a lot longer than that. So if anyone has some safe storage solutions regarding this, please let me know. Moving on to the tea. Oh my God, the tea. This breaks my heart. It's 2 ounces of tea every week per person. That is it. I'm opting for loose leaf because loose leaf in a teapot is so much better. You can pretty much eke 2 cups of tea out of 1 teaspoon. So I think I might be okay with this, but we'll see how we go. Now, tea was definitely the preferred beverage of the time, to the point where I read recently that after weapons and fuel and whatnot, the government spent more on tea than anything else at one stage. But what about coffee? As it turns out, it wasn't actually rationed, but it was just incredibly difficult to come by. They did, however, have something called camp coffee, which was made from roasted chicory, rye, barley, all of that good stuff. And guess what? I just happen to have some here. This is called Nature's Cuppa. It's caffeine-free, yawn. It's a rich roast and has all of those things that I've just said. Never tried this before, but shall I try some for you now? Just made myself a cup. Let's give this a go. That's weird. It actually doesn't smell like anything. Oh my God, do I have COVID? Wait, I can smell it now. It's okay. Calm down, everyone. All right, let's give this a go. Yep. That tastes like betrayal and deceit. It's not coffee. I mean, you know what though? Hold on. It's actually not as bad as I was expecting it to be. The reason I'm bringing this up is because in solidarity with our brothers and sisters of yesteryear, I have decided that I'm going to attempt to give up coffee for the whole year. Now, I'm a 3-a-day kind of guy, so that's actually a big step for me. And I'm sure that, 5 days deep into severe caffeine withdrawal, I'm going to be living the shit out of this stuff. So, you know what? Cheers. Now, the great news here is that fruits and vegetables weren't actually rationed. So the government encouraged everybody to grow their own in what was known as the Dig for Victory campaign. It didn't matter how small or large your plot of land was, if you could grow fruits or veggies or herbs there, you would do it. In fact, public gardens and parks were even ripped out to grow vegetables. Even the royal family, who were also subject to the rations, apparently ripped out their gardens to help grow cabbages. So we're going to be eating a lot of root vegetables here, as we can see. From what I've read, tomatoes weren't that common. You could use them occasionally, but not as much as I would like to. And when it comes to the humble onion, oh dear. Okay, onions were so rare that they were actually given as wedding gifts and the top prize in a raffle. They had to rely on local growers for their onions. So throughout the year, we're not going to be seeing a whole lot of these, unfortunately. They did have a lot of spring onions. So when it comes to the wartime recipes, basically what I'm going to do, if the recipe calls for either an onion or spring onion, the rule is I have to use the spring onion. But if it calls for an onion, I'm just going to use it. The other thing that seems to be missing in these recipes is garlic. There's hardly any mention of it. Now, I'm not sure if this is because it just wasn't fashionable at the time. I know that the whole Mediterranean cooking thing really came in at the late 50s. Or maybe it was just hard to grow, or was it imported? I'm not sure. If someone could let me know. Basically, in all the wartime cookbooks that I have, garlic is only mentioned twice, and one of those times is actually garlic powder. So unfortunately, we won't be using a lot of garlic either, which sucks because basically every meal I ever cook always starts with onions and garlic. Not this year. When it came to the fruits, citrus was considered a priority food, especially oranges. So they were given out to children and expectant mothers. From there, they were diverted to areas of the country that were under heavy enemy attack. And after that, any surplus, from what I understand anyway, was kind of rotated around different regions on a rotating roster, I guess. So you could occasionally get them, but it was pretty rare. So again, we're not going to be seeing a whole lot of citrus this year. Lemons, limes, and oranges. Fruits, we will be eating a lot of pears, apples, plums if we can get them, and of course berries, which are currently in season because it's summer here in Australia. Now, one of the most fascinating statistics of this time, I think anyway, is that because of this rationing, which lasted close to 15 years, supposedly the British population had never been healthier before or since. Life expectancy actually increased. So this is why I have absolutely no qualms heading into this year, eating all of this gorgeous produce. I'm very blessed. This is just absolutely amazing and I can't wait to get stuck into it. Believe it or not, bread actually wasn't rationed during the war. I think the general consensus was that it would have been a step too far to ration the bread. However, it was heavily regulated. And this was the birth of the universally despised national loaf, which was actually dubbed Hitler's secret weapon. Now, I'm actually going to do a separate video about the bread because I'm going to be making my own national loaf throughout the year, so I'll probably do that in the next video. Now, obviously, people were able to eat and purchase other foods other than vegetables and what was on the official ration. But how did that work when everything was in such short supply? The government had an answer for that as well. So they introduced what was known as the point system to coincide with the official rationing. The way it worked, now I think it came into effect in 1941, or it might have been the year before, I'm not quite sure on that one. But the way it worked is everyone was allocated a certain number of points per month, which they could then use to purchase additional store cupboard ingredients. For instance, when it was first introduced, everyone was allocated a meager 16 points. Now, to give you an example of how you could use these points, if I wanted to purchase a pound of oatmeal, which is approximately 453 grams, that's 1 pound of oatmeal, this would have cost me 2 points. If I wanted a can of baked beans, this one can would have cost me 4 points. So with just these two items alone, I've already spent 6 points. I only get 16 for the whole month. So you can see how hard it was. Now, basically everything had points attached to it. Now, let's say I wanted a can of tuna or salmon. So think about when you go to the supermarket, there's usually that one section, that whole wall dedicated to all the canned fish. One of those cans back in the 1940s would have cost me anywhere between 16 and 32 points for one can. It would have been 1 pound, so 453 grams. I could not afford that as a single person household. I am not blowing my entire monthly points on one freaking can of fish. I will go without. Now, obviously, if you lived in a household with more people, maybe you could allocate someone's point to get that one can. It would afford you more variety in that regard. But that's not going to be happening here. So other popular items were spam, obviously, canned beef, corned beef, I do believe it was. Basically anything you can think of had points attached to it. Now, like the rations, the points fluctuated quite heavily, both in the amount that you received and how many points things cost you. So the points were actually at their lowest when this system was introduced, but thereafter it was increased to 20 points a month, 24 points a month was the typical average. In 1946, it shot all the way up to 32 points. Now, if something was in short supply, the government would raise the points needed to purchase that particular item. And if they had a plentiful stock of a particular item, they would lower the points to encourage more people to purchase it. Now, you might be wondering where I got all this information from, and it's mainly coming from this document here, which is from the Ministry of Food. And I think it was published in 1949. It basically covers everything you could possibly want to know regarding rationing and the point system from 1941 to 1949. Now, for anyone that's interested, I downloaded this document from a fabulous website called the 1940s Experiment. Shout out to Carolyn, this is her website. She's done such an incredible job. It's an amazing archive. She has over 200 official wartime recipes. There are all these pamphlets from the Ministry of Food. She also has a YouTube channel, and she's also doing this ration challenge. I think she's doing it for 2 years. In fact, she's hardcore, and she's documenting her whole weight loss journey throughout the whole process. So you go, girl, and thank you so much for the amazing website. I do believe there's also a Facebook group as well. Also, while we're at it, shout out to Ration Book Rebecca. I just love your videos so much. She loves all things vintage. She often dabbles in these ration challenges. She posts lots of recipes and does these cool little knitting things. And honestly, just sitting down and watching her videos feels like you're having a good old-fashioned natter with your best mate. So love you both. Thank you so much for the inspiration. And I'll link all of their details below, so please go and show them some love as well. Now, in terms of my own food storage, I generally try to keep a pretty stocked pantry at all times in case of emergency. As an example, last year when COVID finally sunk her claws into me, I couldn't leave the apartment for 2 weeks, and I realized then that I was fizzucked because I was running pretty low on supplies. But these are some of the things that I generally try to keep on hand at all times. We've got some brown rice, white rice, green lentils, red lentils, barley, and some kind of pasta. I typically don't eat a lot of pasta these days, but it's always good to have on hand in case you're in a pinch. So basically what I've decided, I've already got the ingredients here, but if I need to use any of them, I have to allocate some points. For instance, if I wanted to use a pound of lentils, I would have to allocate 2 points for a pound of lentils for that month. Now, these are some of the items I won't be rationing this year for various reasons. Sometimes because I'll be using so little of them that they'll probably last me the rest of the year. But in terms of the flour, wholemeal of course, and the yeast, I'm going to be making my own national loaf bread, whereas back then they could have just gone to the bakery and bought their own bread. So I'm not going to worry about rationing these items here. Corn flour, I don't think it was rationed and it wasn't on the point system, but to be honest, I rarely use it anyway. But yeah, we've just got basic things really, like salt, pepper, some herbs and spices. We've got some cinnamon, nutmeg. We've got some homegrown oregano and thyme here. My beautiful, lovely friend Tao grew these and gave them to me, so thank you very much. I love them. We've got some mustard powder and some curry powder. We do have baking powder and bicarb soda. I do think these were on the point system, but this is almost full. This is almost full. So I guess if I end up running out of these two things, I will have to allocate some points to replace those ones. Over here, we have some tomato sauce, some Lee & Perrins Worcester. I'm not sure, were they on the point system? I can't find any information on that. Similarly, we've got a jar of pickles. Now, I'm half Polish, and good Pole always have a jar of pickle in the fridge. We've got some basic flavors here. We've got some vanilla extract and some lemon extract as well. I think that'll last me a pretty long time. Here we've got some homemade sweet mustard pickles. Thank you very much, mother darling. She made these and gave them to me recently. Very, very nice. Now in the middle here, we do have some stock cubes. Now, I'm going to be making my own veggie stock throughout the year. I do know that you could get beef stock back then. However, I can't find any information on how many points you needed or if you needed any at all to purchase it. However, when it comes to the chicken stock, I don't think this was available back then. If anyone knows better, please let me know. The thing is, you rarely see chicken crop up in these vintage recipes. I have this beautiful 1931 cookbook, and there are hardly any chicken recipes in there. I think it was quite a luxury. It was more of a, special Christmas Day kind of thing if you were going to have a chicken. Anyways, we do have these 2 packets here. So once these are gone, that's it. There is no more chicken stock for the rest of the year. Otherwise, I'm just going to be making my own vegetable stock. Similarly, I guess once these run out, I don't know, until I find out if they're available on the point system or not. I guess that'll be the end of the beef stock as well. But basically, these are the ingredients that I will not be rationing. So in terms of my Kickstarter pantry, this is what I'm starting with. So if the rations were announced today, these are the things I have left in my cupboard that I can slowly work through throughout the year, I guess. Now, there are a few luxury items here that probably I wouldn't be able to afford on the point system, but mostly this stuff is just things that I actually need to use up before they expire. All right, so over here we have 3 cans of sauerkraut. I typically only use this whenever I'm making pierogi, which is Polish dumplings, so that's probably what I'll use that for. Actually really looking forward to that. I found 1 lonely little can of coconut milk in my pantry. Now, I cannot find any reference to coconut milk or coconut cream anywhere from the time period. Did they have this stuff available? I know they had other coconut products available. I've seen it in the recipes, but there's been no mention of this. So is this cheating? I don't know. Anyways, I am going to allow myself this 1 can for the entire year. I already know what I'm going to do with it as well. So we're going to make an amazing rainbow dunsuk, which is basically a curry when it starts to cool down. So in the autumn and winter. Really looking forward to that too. We do have some honey. I was gifted this at Christmas. It's a 1 kilo tub. To be honest, I'll probably burn through this relatively quickly because for the past 20 years I've been drinking honey in my tea, but I am going to try and make this last as long as possible. Next up, we have some peanut butter. I don't know how much is left in the jar. I don't really eat a lot of peanut butter, to be honest, but I'm sure I'll enjoy this. Again, haven't seen many references to this at all, so I'm not sure, did they have it back then? Anyways, we've got to use it up. Once it runs out, that's it. No more peanut butter. Next, we have a jar of Promite and Vegemite. These things are really good along with Marmite for flavoring stocks or soups or stews, things like that. Or if you don't have any stock, you can just use this stuff instead. Promite is actually quite sweet. I was really surprised. You can slather this on like you would Nutella on toast. I wouldn't recommend it though. Not a fan, probably won't buy this again. But again, once these things run out, we'll have to use some points to replace them. Moving on, we have some leftover custard powder. I don't think this was on the ration or the point system, so I should be able to purchase some of that unless anyone knows better. Got a little bit left over there. Again though, I'm not really a fan of custard unless it's homemade, proper custard. Next we have some cocoa powder. Now this is a luxury. I do believe that cocoa powder actually formed part of the sweet ration. So instead of receiving 12 ounces of chocolate or boiled sweets or whatever, you could opt to get cocoa powder instead. But this is what I have already, and I'm using it as my get out of jail free card for the year ahead. Once this runs out, if I want to replace it, I'll have to use some points. Again, we have some golden syrup, which came under the preserve ration. I honestly cannot remember when I bought this. It was so long ago, and it's going to expire in oh, has it already expired? I mean, it's basically sugar. It should last a long time, but we do have to get through it. No idea what I'm going to use it for, but we'll see. We'll come up with something. We have like 3/4 of a jar left of capers. Surprisingly, capers come up in the wartime recipes. I was quite shocked with that one. We have a little bit of Dijon mustard left. There's probably about half a jar there. And then we have the precious garlic. I have no more fresh garlic left. That is it. So whatever is left in this jar, which is probably only a tablespoonful, this is it. This is the only garlic that we're going to have. So we have to savor this and use it for something very, very special. And then we have some gravy. I'm not really a fan of this stuff, to be honest, either. I would prefer to make my own gravy if I can. This is about half full. So again, I'm not sure, was this on the point system? I haven't seen any reference to it, so if anyone knows, yeah, please let me know. And last but not least, we just have a box of Wheat Bix, which I need to get through. And that is it. This is my free from rations, free from points Kickstarter pantry that I am starting the year with. Now, I could be wrong, but I suspect that somewhere out there, lurking among you, there may be a few, shall we say, purists who may find themselves watching this video and casually start frothing at the mouth and seething with anger, simply because they wouldn't have had plant-based meat substitutes in the 40s. You're not being authentic at all. How dare you? The audacity. Stop using modern kitchen appliances and throw away your freezer. They didn't exist back then. This is an outrage! To those select few, with all the love and light that I can muster in my heart, I just want to say, shut the f*** up! But seriously, guys, with the current state of the world and everything that's going on, now more than ever, we really need to be pulling together to encourage and support each other and set aside our differences so we can work on fixing this broken humanity. I really feel like we have far greater things to be concerned about right now, rather than whether or not some random guy on YouTube is opting to use a plant-based mince to that of a dead animal. I'm not vegan. I'm not even vegetarian. I just prefer a vegetarian diet. Here's the thing. This is a year-long gastronomic experiment, not a technical one. And as much as I love the 1940s, my goal here isn't to completely immerse myself in the age, although the music is fabulous. I'm merely drawing inspiration from what I think are some of the best principles, practices, and philosophies of the age to show you, and myself as much as anyone else, that we can eat well, we can eat healthy, we can live on less, save money, and stop wasting so much food when so many others must endure without. And that is the beating heart of this mission.
So put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Regarding this channel, and this challenge for that matter, it's very much going to be a learn as I go experience. And while I do want to keep this channel fun and lighthearted, I'll crack the occasional joke here and there. It's important for me that people know that I am taking it seriously, but also in referencing this specific era and time, I am approaching it with utmost reverence in my heart. Like millions of other families around the world, the Second World War touched our family as well. So I'm half Polish. My grandparents on my father's side were in Poland during the Second World War. My grandfather was in Warsaw before he was sent to a concentration camp. My grandmother was forced to go and work on the farms, and I don't mean in a women's land army kind of way. They actually met when the war ended in a holding camp, and then they migrated to Australia in 1950. In terms of the heritage on my mother's side, it's predominantly Scottish, English, with a dash of German aristocracy. How about them apples? But that's like way, way back. So yeah, at the end of the day, we're all just a genetic cocktail of DNA, right? But I've digressed. My grandfather on my mother's side was born in Australia, but he also fought in the Second World War. It's kind of crazy to think there's only one generation separating my life from theirs. And when I think about everything that they had to go through just to survive, compared to my life today, I mean, what do you say, We've got it good. It's probably time to wrap up now because it is becoming quite a long video. But if you have made it this far, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And if you're thinking about giving this a go as well, definitely let me know. I would love the company. But remember, you can make this your own. Make it work for you. You don't have to do it the way I'm doing it. Maybe you have specific dietary requirements, or you might live in a part of the world where you don't have access to some of these ingredients. Maybe you just want to try reducing your meat, fat, and sugar intake for a week or two. Whatever you decide is fine. And if you are currently experiencing food insecurity, don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. There's nothing shameful about it. We've all been through those tough spots in life where we need a little extra help. If you're not sure where to go, you can definitely check in with your local council, maybe a library or fire brigade. Your preferred place of worship could definitely guide you in the right direction. If you're in the local Melbourne area, I will post some resources below which may hopefully help you. So thank you so much once again. I really look forward to the year ahead, a year of rationing and all the crazy recipes that we're going to try out together. Until next time, keep calm and remember, you are a unique expression of the same consciousness that binds us all.